Hello, this is Jarkova and this is part 2. Recently, while I was editing part 1, I went and picked up a record collection for my business. I picked up this Filipino folk dancing record. I know, not rare, but I like this sort of foreign stuff. And when we get to the foreign part in my collection, you'll know and you can tell that I like foreign music. We've got another one, a Filipina collection. Jelly Roll Morton. One of them digital remaster pieces of shit, but I'll give it a try. This one was cool. The Travs with Love Storm, late 70s funk soul there. But in this collection, this was probably the best find in the whole collection. An original Australian pressing of the Runaways' debut album, which I did not expect to find in this collection, so that was pretty much worth the money I spent on this collection. Original Australian pressing right here, which is pretty cool. Another one that I picked up that's been on my wish list for a couple of years, Tom Jones with Delilah. To add to the soundtrack collection, I got the Pink Panther soundtrack. This one was cool. This is a New Zealand record from the late 70s. And then, speaking of foreign records, here's a Pacific Islands record, which is mainly Fijian and stuff like that. From, I would assume, probably from around the 60s or 70s that record came out. So that was a pretty cool find. Those were pretty much the records I found while I was picking up this record collection that I picked up recently. But let's get into the collection part of the video, which I'll do in a second. Since we've done the first shelf and the miscellaneous section, let's get into my rock and R&B section here. The first 2 or 3 records I've got, if I can grab them. AC/DC. So we've got an 80s reissue of High Voltage. We also got an 80s reissue of TNT. This one's an original pressing of If You Want Blood, which is cool. I got these for a steal of a deal many years ago, so of course I was happy to have those. While we're doing this, I'm just going to pull out a few more here. We got Alice Cooper Goes to Hell, which was a cheap record store find. This one is probably my personal favourite in the collection. This is the Wax Time reissue of the Big Bopper singing Chantilly Lays with Hello Baby, which is a collection of songs that he recorded, plus songs from the original pressing of this album that was released in '58 on Mercury. Billy Wharton is Dominoes featuring Clyde McFadden. Blind Melon Soup. This is the second album and the final album they did with their original lead singer Shannon Hoon, who sadly after the release of this album died from a fatal overdose of drugs at the age of 28. I'm still looking for an original pressing of the first album, which is very hard to come by. So when I found that original pressing of Soup in one of the collections I picked up many years ago, I was happy. Bruno Mars's first album, his second album, Unorthodox Jukebox. And then, obviously, this one my girlfriend got me, 24 Karat Magic, which, if she's watching, thank you very much. Alright, we got some more. We got Buddy Holly, what's this one called? For the First Time Anywhere. This is a bunch of unreleased and rare versions of tracks that Buddy did, including a rare version of That's My Desire, and a rare version of Maybe Baby, which is pretty cool. Yeah, some Buddy Holly. And probably the only Buddy Holly album I have in my collection. Not that I don't like Buddy Holly, but when it comes to Buddy Holly, I'm more of a greatest hits guy myself, personally. We got Chuck Berry Golden Decade Volume 1. And then we got Chuck Berry Golden Decade Volume 2. This one was from a Family Relatives collection. The London Chuck Berry Sessions, which includes My Ding-a-Ling, and a really good killer version of Mean Mean World. You know, the old blues tune from the 40s. This one wasn't included in the 2015 box set of the Cold Chisel stuff that I showed, but this is their live album, Swinging Shift. Cold Chisel's 2019 album, Blood Moon. This is my Creedence Clearwater Revival collection, so we've got a reissue of the first album, Willie and the Poor Boys, which I picked up for $5 many years ago, along with Cosmo's Factory. Pendulum. And then their final album without Tom Fogerty, of course, because he had left the group by that point. And John was kind of sick of being in the group, so he said to Doug and Stu, hey guys, write a bunch of fucking songs. And they did, and half of the songs aren't really that great. That's the Mardi Gras album, the final one they did. And I want to cover that in a future video at some point as its own separate review. I do want to cover that album. We got some Del Shannon albums. We got Hats Off to Del Shannon, Handyman. This is the album Tom Petty produced for Del Shannon, Drop Down and Get Me. And then Del Shannon, The Final Concert, which isn't his final concert, but it's one of the last publicly released concerts that he did in 1989 before he unfortunately committed suicide the following year. This is a Dennis Wilson album. This was meant to be the follow-up to his first album, Pacific Ocean Blue, but unfortunately due to his drug abuse and his health problems and many other factors and his relationship with Christy McVie, this album was never put out. Fun fact, Christy McVie from Fleetwood Mac, she wrote and I think she produced some of the songs that were meant to be on that album. So yeah, we got my Doors collection, Japanese pressing of the first album, American pressing of the second album, Strange Days. The last album they did with Jim, an original pressing of LA Woman. And the Morrison Hotel Sessions, which probably not one of my favorite releases. It's not a good release. There's a lot of problems with the sound quality. And the record isn't really that great. Especially if you want the first record, almost its entirety, to be 12 takes of the same fucking song. I mean, Be My Guest. Then you will enjoy that if you want to hear 12 identical, pretty much the same takes of Queen of the Highway. For some reason, I don't know why they included 12 different versions on that vinyl. Pretty pointless. Personally, as a Doors fan, I think it is. We got Dobie Gray's 1979 album. Self-titled. I like it. It's a good R&B record. We got my Elton John collection here, which, give me a second, bear with me. So we've got Madman Across the Water, Don't Shoot Me, I'm Only the Piano Player, Rock of the Westies, and his 1976 album Blue Moves. Yeah, that's my Elton John collection. Not much, I know, but his albums are pretty costly here to find in Australia, unfortunately. So that's good fun. We've got a few more I'm going to show for this first shelf. We got Fanny Hall. They were an all-female rock group from, I think they were from like Los Angeles. Yeah, an all-female rock group from the early 70s. Faith Evans' self-titled album from 1995. Then we got my Genesis collection, A Trick of the Tail, Wind and Withering, and then we've got and then there was Free, Duke. Hold on a second, bear with me. So then my Genesis collection goes onto this shelf. So we've also got I can't even pronounce that, but you know this album. This is the one from 1981. Then we get into my In Excess collection. We got Underneath the Colors. We got this one, I can't pronounce it. We also got The Swing. And then Listen Like Thieves. Obviously In Excess, one of, if not my all-time favourite groups that came out of Australia from the 70s and 80s. Love In Excess. You know, especially their album Kick, which I'm still looking for on vinyl. Hopefully one day I'll find it. This is where we get into my Janis Joplin collection, Big Brother and the Holding Company Cheap Thrills, an original US pressing of I Got Them Old Cosmic Blues Again Mama, Pearl, the last album she did, and then the posthumous Farewell Song Japanese pressing of that there. Yeah, Janis Joplin, one of them electric voices that was silenced way too soon. We got some John Fogerty here. We got his self-titled album, which has Rockin' All Over the World, the song that Status Quo would ever hit with. We got Center Field, I Had the Zombie, and then we also got The Last Concert of Johnny O'Keefe, which, if you don't know Johnny O'Keefe, for my international viewers, he was pretty much our Elvis. He was a rock and roll singer and showman who knew how to put on a show. One of my all-time favorite songwriters, Joe Self, with the Joe Self Story. Joe Self, one of those great American songwriters. He wrote for people like Lynn Anderson, Elvis, Billy Royal, the Osmonds, the list goes on and on. Billy Joe Royal, sorry, that was what I was meant to say. Josh White, Chain Gang Songs, really good folk album. Sort of R&B folk, I would call it. Really good. From the late 50s. Here's my Kiss collection, which isn't much, but it's getting there. Rock and Roll Over, Japanese pressing with the Obi strip. Japanese pressing of Love Gun. The Gene Simmons solo album. Kiss Dynasty or Dynasty, depending on how you say it. For many years there was a rumor that Jimi Hendrix played on this record, Little Richard's back, but he did not. And it's been proven to be a myth. It was pretty much just some bullshit made up by people for attention. Yeah, so Jimi Hendrix didn't really play with Little Richard, unfortunately. Lizzo, Special. I know a lot of people don't like Lizzo, but I like her R&B sound. Don't really like her politics or her body positivity bullshit, but I do like the music, and she does make good music at the end of the day. Merv Benson sounds great. This was an op shop find, or a thrift store find, a couple of years ago. Give me a sec. Let me have my water. A couple of years ago I went to a thrift store and I found this for $4. This record goes for a fair bit of money, and it's a good album, really solid early 60s Australian rock and roll music with a bit of rhythm and blues in there. He does a good version of You Send Me. He does I Got Buried, which is one of my favorites. He also does Hello Josephine, Too Much, Goodnight Irene. Unfortunately, a career that was cut way too short, not in the sense of he died, but he had problems with his vocal cords, and as a result, pretty much quit the industry in his mid-20s. The two Men at Work albums, Business as Usual and Cargo, right there. Stolen Apples by Paul Kelly, one of, if not easily, one of his best records he's ever done. I love this album. Feelings of Grief is just such a great, beautiful song that he wrote for the record. Polish Club, Now We're Cooking. This is a group of two guys that I got into during COVID. Really like their music. Again, I do not stand with their politics, but I love their music. So, of course, I had to have a copy of Now We're Cooking. Yeah, Powderfinger with Vulture Street. This is the 20th anniversary edition on vinyl that they did a couple years ago. The original pressing goes for a fuck ton of money, so yeah, gonna stay away from that. Richie Valens, this is a concert he did at his high school in about December 1958, and it's a really good concert. The quality is not the best, but it's still a fun concert. He does a rare version of the Eddie Cochran tune Summertime Blues, of course. Richie Valens there, one of the members of the Day the Music Died, you know, with Buddy Holly and the Big Bopper, most famously. The one Rolling Stones album I have, which is a compilation, the Rolling Stones Rewind. So many great songs come off this compilation. Brown Sugar, Fumbling Dice, Undercover of the Night, Start Me Up, Miss You, Beast of Burden, Angie, Respectable. So many great songs come on this compilation, so I had to pick that up. The Rolling Stones Rewind, 1971 to 1984. This is my Skyhooks collection, so we've got their lead singer Shell with his solo album, It's All Rock and Roll to Me. Yeah, It's All Rock and Roll to Me. I'm guessing they did it to kind of capitalize off the oldies trend in the late 70s, early 80s. Their first album of Skyhooks is Band, Living in the 70s. Their second one, Straight in a Gay World. Oh, sorry, this is Straight in a Gay World. This is, fucking idiot, this is Ego Is Not a Dirty Word. And then we have Straight in a Gay World. Guilty Till Proven Insane, or Until Proven Insane. This is the album they did without Shell that people don't like, Hot for the Orient, but I actually like this record, and I think it's actually a pretty good record. This is the reunion album they did, which was a live concert, and they released it as Living in the 80s, which is not a bad album, but you could tell by that point they had pretty much aged, and it seems like Shell struggled to kind of sing the high notes on some of those songs, especially in this show. But, you know, it's still a decent and solid performance besides that sort of problem, you know. It was just good to see the guys come back again in the mid-80s. This is one album I've been looking for years. One of the greatest Australian records ever released and produced on Albert. Hard Road by Stevie Wright. Such a beautiful album. Every song from beginning to end is a solid listen. Obviously, everyone knows Evie. That's probably the best known track, the 3-part epic Evie, but I like Hard Road, Life Gets Better, and Didn't I Take You Higher. So many great tracks off that. legendary record. Found it a couple years ago for no, actually I found it in a collection that I picked up from someone. Found it in a collection. Speaking of Stevie, we also got Stevie Ray Vaughan, one of his records there called Soul to Soul. No blues collection would be complete without a compilation. This is Sun Records Harmonica Classics that I picked up in the country music lot that I got many years ago. This was steel sealed and I opened it and played it, and it's such a good compilation of the Sun recordings from the 1950s. Not a bad sounding comp too, actually. We got the Cockroaches with their 1991 album Positive. Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers. This is a reissue, not an original, but such a great essential. You know, if you love doo-wop, this is an essential album. Late 1950s doo-wop. I mean, Why Do Fools Fall in Love? I Promise to Remember, I Want You to Be My Girl. Baby Baby, ABC of Love. I'm Not a Juvenile Delinquent. Such great classic stuff on Roulette. Thumpin' Pig and Puffin' Billy. This was another op shop find. A great blues album by Billy Thorpe from Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs. Picked that up for $5 in an op shop, so that was a good find. Tim Hardin's last album, 9, which I actually really enjoy. Such a good blues album there from the mid-70s. A lot of people don't like the album, but I actually enjoy it. I think it's pretty good. The Weeknd, Dawn FM. This was a gift from my girlfriend when we first started dating. This was one of the first gifts she got me. Dawn FM by The Weeknd. Really good R&B. I know more people would class it as pop, but I class it as R&B. And then we've got 2 albums by The Who. We got The Who by Numbers. And then we've got Who Are You, which is also the version that also has the lyric Who the Fuck Are You in it. You know, the original lyric that they cut off the single. The part when Roger Daltrey yells at, "Who the fuck are you?" You know, and it just goes to the whole instrumentation. Now we get into my jazz and pop section. This one I picked up for I think $1 in an op shop. This was just a random one. At the time I had watched the movie The Shining. I'd rewatched it again as a late teenager, young adult. And one day I was in my local op shop and I saw a compilation album of this guy, Al Broly's 20 Golden Greats. Some of the songs on here were also featured in that movie. His story's pretty sad. He was a famous crooner, sort of jazz crooner singer from the 1920s and 30s. Unfortunately, he was killed in World War II. He's one of the casualties. He didn't die in the war, but he got bombed. So what happened was, when Britain got bombed in 1941, his apartment that he lived in was one of the targets, and he was a casualty, unfortunately, of that really sad situation during the war. Yeah, Al Broly. We got 3 albums by Amy Winehouse. We got all her 3 albums. We got the first one, Frank, Back to Black, and then her last album, Lioness, Hidden Treasures, her last record, which is alright, it's not bad, but her first 2 albums are the definitive albums. Like, if you enjoy Amy Winehouse as much as I do, those first 2 albums are the definitive ones that you should buy and listen to. So a few years ago I was watching a mini-series about the murder of Gianni Versace, and in this series they had this beautiful jazz piece that was playing in the show, and I didn't know what it was. So I went on to songfinder.com and I discovered it was this jazz piano composition by a guy named Barry Harris. Turns out there was a copy of this album, but it was available in Japan. And when we went into lockdown back in 2020, I was watching a lot of TV, so I found a copy of this album on discogs for a steal of a price. Yeah, for a steal of a deal. And I picked it up from Japan. Listened to Barry Harris solo piano on Riverside. That's a reissue from the 70s, but a really good sounding repress nonetheless. And then this is my Beach Boys collection. So this is pretty much everything of the Beach Boys that I own. So we're going to try and get through this. We've got their first album, Surfin' Safari. The second album, Surfer Girl. Shutdown Volume 2, which has the famous banter session between Brian Wilson and Mike Love. All Summer Long. Original Australian of the Beach Boys Today. New Zealand 70s reissue of Pet Sounds. 15 Big Ones, which a lot of people don't like that album, but I have a soft spot for it. I mean, there's so many good songs on here, like In the Steel of the Night, which Dennis Wilson sings. I Had to Phone Ya, Chapel of Love, Everyone's in Love with You, one of the few solid mic performances. It's Okay, that same song. There's so many good songs on this. Susie Cincinnati, and then this is the MIU album, I think it's called. Is it called MIU? Yeah. MIU? Yeah. And then LA Lights, which is the album with the terrible disco version of Here Comes the Night from Wild Honey, which a lot of people don't like, the one that Bruce Johnston produced, and it was terrible. Not a good version. Billy Joel's An Innocent Man, probably his best album he ever did. This is pretty much him being inspired by the sounds of doo-wop and rock and roll, and this album is a great example of that. Uptown Girl's probably the most famous song on that, but there's so many better songs, like Easy Money, Tell Her About It, Tonight, I think is on there. Bing Crosby's final album, Seasons, which I like as a concept album. It's a pretty good jazz album. You got concept songs about winter, spring, autumn, and summer. So that's cool. Yeah, the last album he ever did. And fun fact, this was one of the last, if not the last, professional photo taken of Bing Crosby 3 days before his death. So that's a cool piece. This record I picked up quite a few years ago. I'll tell you a bit of a story. So about 8 or 9 years ago, I did a cover of this guy's song, and the guy liked it, and me and him sort of became online friends, and unfortunately he died about 5 or 6 years ago now. But this is a great album. This is BJ Thomas, Everybody's Out of Town. Picked this up for a steal of a deal at a record fair, and BJ Thomas, a really nice guy that unfortunately went away way too soon. Very talented man. And a very nice man too. I was fortunate enough to get to know him in his final years. And the song I covered of his was a song called Just Can't Help Believing. I covered it in the style of his and Elvis's version, so I kind of meshed them up together to make my own version. He liked it, enjoyed it, and we became online correspondents, would you call it? Like online pen pals or whatever, or friends. Yeah, really, really nice man. Book a Little out front. This one I picked up when I was overseas. So what happened was, I went to a record store in Bali called Miller's Records, which I'll put a picture right here. I went to their store and I heard this record in their cafe that they have in the left-hand side of the store. And this was the album, Carmen McCree's Afterglow. Really, really good album. Really good jazz. She does a really good version of Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea. She does a really good version of that, which I might play a little bit of.
I don't want you, but I hate to lose you. You've got me in between the devil and the deep blue sea.
This is Cat Stevens, T for the Tillerman. I'm not going to say more than I already have, because everyone knows this album. So many great songs come off that. Wild World, Father and Son. I think Morning Has Broke comes off that, but I might be wrong. Original Australian pressing of Dream a Little Dream of Me. Reissue of Bubblegum, Lemonade and Something for Mama. Her album she did with Dave Madsen from Traffic. Her first album for RCA, which is a radio station copy, as you can tell by the sticker. The Road Is No Place for a Lady. I do have her last album, Don't Call Me Mama Anymore, but I have it on CD. I have the extended edition of that on CD, so you know. Alright, then we've got, this is my Charles Mingus collection that I've kind of built up over the last, God knows how long, maybe the last year or so. I got into Charles Mingus for a recommendation from a friend of mine. He's really into jazz and he knows I like funk soul, and he's like, give Charles Mingus a try, you might like his stuff. So this is a few of his albums here. Pre-Bird. This is a reissue, but the Black Saint and the Sinner Lady. This is a fucking really long album. The great concert of Charles Mingus. It's literally 2.5 hours long of just Charles Mingus playing Charles Mingus stuff. It's very long. If you're into him, I mean, you'll enjoy it. But if you're someone like me who doesn't want to listen to more than an hour on a record or an hour and a half, you're just like, ugh. This is a great concert album, however, Mingus at Carnegie Hall, and then his final album that he did, which is called Caramba and Jazz Fusion, his last album he did before he died in 79. Really good stuff there. Dean Martin's Italian Love Songs. Of course, I gotta have Dean Martin singing in Italian. I love this record. It's one of the best. If you want a definitive version of just him doing Italian love songs, I'm a sucker for that sort of stuff. The only Demis Russo album you'll see me have in the collection, Doc Severinsen, as of this video, I think he's still alive, and this dude is 99 years old, and he's had a long career. He's most famously known for playing the entrance music on The Tonight Show. He was a part of that orchestra. So he played on The Tonight Shows from Steve Allen all the way to Jay Leno, I think, if I'm correct. Yeah, Doc Sevison with the album Doc. I picked this up because it's been sampled by the likes of Biggie Smalls, Mobb Deep. Who else? Cypress Hill, I think, sampled this. I might be wrong. But yeah, Doc Sevison. Errol Gardner, Concert by the Sea. And then we've got another Errol Gardner here that I recently picked up. Errol Gardner plays Misty, which is a beautiful jazz composition that he wrote. Famously recorded by Johnny Mathis, of course. Pardon me. So we've also got Eric Dolby, Last Date. And then Flo and Eddie from the Turtles with their album Moving Targets. This one is my granddad's record, so I have a bit of a soft spot for this, and I kept it for that reason. Gene Pedney's 20 Golden Greats, great collection of his biggest hits. This one was a pickup from my girlfriend. She gave me this, Harry Styles' self-titled solo debut album from 2017. Joe Sample with Rainbow Seeker. Most famously, Ray Parker Jr. plays on this record, and it's really cool. Really good fucking jazz record here from the late 70s. Pretty good stuff. Again, it's been sampled by the likes of Tupac and all them different rappers. The Ladder, which is a great jazz concept album. Her live album at the Grove. This is my Mamas and Papas collection. And I've pretty much got nearly everything the band... I've pretty much got nearly everything, or I have every single album they ever did. We've got the self-titled... No. We've got If You Can Believe Your Eyes and Ears with the censored toilet cover. We got their self-titled album, which is a New Zealand pressing. We got Deliver. We got The Papas and Mamas. And then this one I reviewed already on my channel. I'm not going to explain what I think of this album, but People Like Us, their last record they ever did. I pretty much explained the story in the video I did, which I'm going to put right here to check out somewhere. My review of People Like Us. It's a very long, complicated story. We got Mount Jackson on Blue Note. This is the only Blue Note record I have as of this recording. This record I picked up many years ago for 50 cents in a thrift store. Miles in Berlin. This is Miles Davis live in Berlin, Germany. Really good jazz record there with Herbie Hancock. I think he plays on that. I think Herbie Hancock's on that record. I might be wrong. This is my Monkees collection, so I'm going to be quick. We've got Meet the Monkees, which is the self-titled. We got the More of the Monkees, and then we've got Headquarters, which has Bob Bobolinger. These all are original Australian mono pressings here from the 60s, so that's cool. You don't see those every day. Oliver Nelson, Full Nelson. We got Paul Kelly's really awful pop album that he did in the late 80s, an album called So Much Water, So Close to Home, which is not his best, personally, of the records he's done. Not a terrible album, but it's not one of his best. It's probably one of his weaker albums that he did in the late 80s. An original pressing of the Phil Spector Christmas album, mono pressing here, Australian. I love this record. I play this every single Christmas. I love it so much, I've actually got the CD copy on my shelf right over there. So I've got a vinyl version, a CD version, and a digital version on my Apple Music. So yeah, that's how you know I love that album so much. This is a really weird album, Voodoo Suite, I think it's called, or Salute. This is a weird album, really fun album. The first track is just 23 minutes of random jazz instrumental with like congas and bongos and all this different stuff. And then the second side is pretty typical 1950s cafe bar jazz. But not a bad album. It's actually a pretty good album considering that. I got recommended that about a year ago, and it's a really good album. This is my Phil Collins collection. So we've got Face Value, which has In the Antonite. We got his second album, and then we've got his third album, No Jacket Required, which has the bigger hits on it, like Studio and One More Night and Billy, Don't Lose My Number. There's so many great songs on that. And then we've got Rod Stewart's jazz album, Swing Fever, which is a really good album. I would recommend it. I'm not a big fan of Rod Stewart. Like, I don't love his music completely like everyone else. But this is a solid album from Sir Rod, man. pretty solid. Came out about 2-3 years ago, and I enjoyed it. I actually wanted to buy it on release day, but I didn't have the money for it because they were charging $60 for it on release day. And the only way you could get it was if you bought it from Europe, which I don't have the money to do that. So I waited and waited, and then I went to a record store and I found it for less than I was originally going to be charged for it. This is my Roy Orbison collection, so I'll be pretty quick on this too. We've got In Dreams. This is an album that wasn't released until 2015, which is a travesty. Originally recorded in 1969 and meant to be released in 1969. But his record company said pretty much a big FU, and they didn't put it out till 27, 28 years after he died. One of the lonely ones. We got the compilation album, sort of, the previously unreleased stuff. His disco album, which I've spoken about already. In Dreams, the Greatest Hits, which is just him re-recording all his classics. The Black and White Night. And his 1992 album, King of Hearts, which has his version of I Drove All Night, and the duet of Crying with Katie Lang. And then the orchestra album, A Love So Beautiful, which I got given to me as a gift on my 16th birthday, fun fact. So, you know, even back then I was a record collector. This is the last of the pop and jazz section. So we've got the best of Sonny and Cher. You know, I like Cher when she was in this phase of her career and her early solo stuff, not so much her later stuff, but this is a pretty good album. I mean, The Beat Goes On, I Got You Babe, Little Man, Sing, Say La Vie, etc., etc., great compilation. And Fallopius Monk in Italy on Riverside. Yes, I've been trying to build up my jazz collection for quite a bit of time now, so of course I had to pick those up. And that's pretty much the end of my pop and jazz section. Here's the foreign section. So this is all my stuff that I consider foreign music from different parts of the world. We got the Ellie Barber album, which is a pretty solid album. Pretty fun beats album there. Showtime Spectacular with the High Marks, which they were a New Zealand pop group from the late 70s. We also got The Warrior, which was based on an African musical. We also got King Sunny Aid and his African Beats, Juju Music, which is a really fun album on Ireland. We got a few more here. We got this one, Lex's Trio, which I picked this up when I was in Bali a couple months ago. Really solid 70s Indonesian stuff. Sort of poppy, sort of soulful, sort of disco-y, like proto-disco. The only Nana Muscuri album you'll see me have in my collection. This is an interesting Turkish record that I picked up in a local pawnbroker's. They didn't even know what it was, and they gave it to me for $1. This is a good album. I got recommended this off Ingi. Try and Love. This one I got recommended to me at a record fair by a friend of mine who's also a seller at the record fairs. He recommended me this album and I gave it a try, and it's pretty good. Pretty good Nigerian, what would you describe it? Like Nigerian, like funk, like psychedelic funk from the early to mid 70s there. This is a collection called Our Very Own, which is a collection of Filipino 80s pop music. Sucker for that, of course. Picked that up for $5 at a flea market. Ravi Shankar, yep, of course. If you don't know, Ravi Shankar was a very big influence on George Harrison, most famously. We got some Russian folk songs, which is a pretty controversial one, considering all the stuff that's been going on in the world the last couple of years. For You by Tazumu Yamashite. This is an original Japanese pressing. Really good album. Really solid record, actually. Yeah, Tazumu Yamashite with For You, which is 80s city pop, and it's wonderful. Victor Jar. This is one of his last recordings he ever did before he got murdered. He was a political musician that got assassinated in his hometown of Chile. There's a documentary about it on Netflix, which is really sad and really fucked up. I'm going to take a bit of a break, but when I come back, we're going to do the Beatles and Elvis section of the record shelves, and then that'll be the end of part 2. So we are back, and we are going to do the Beatles and then the Elvis sections of the record shelf. These two particular artists I really love, or groups, and so I put them as their own separate sections. So here's my Beatles section. We've got the clear white vinyl of the Decca tapes, which, if you don't know, they originally tried to audition for Decca Records, and then Decca told them to fuck off, and then they obviously in America went to Capitol, but over here they went to Parlophone. We got some Japanese pressings of their records, which, give me a second. So we got a Japanese pressing of Hard Day's Night with an alternate cover, Beatles for Sale, Help, Rubber Soul, and then we've got an Australian reissue of the Magical Mystery Tour EP that was turned into an LP with some bonus tracks there, and a Japanese pressing of Yellow Submarine from the mid to late 70s. The Beatles Rarities, which was a part of the box set originally, but then they put it out as a separate release. Parlophone did, here in Australia. We got some stuff. This was an album that George Harrison produced called Goddess of Fortune, originally released under a different title, which I'll put up here. Okay, and then we got my George collection, which I'm going to try and get through as best as I can, try and speedball it. We got Extra Texture, 33 and a half, the self-titled album, Somewhere in England, the album that Jeff Lynne produced, Cloud 9, and then the Traveling Wilburys project, which is the first volume. Don't have volume 3 because it's pretty expensive on the market for an original of that. Alright, then we got some John Lennon stuff here. Might as well get it out of the way. This is all my John Lennon stuff. So we got the Plastic Ono Band live in Toronto. What is this album? The Plastic Ono Band album. Imagine, with the original photo of John holding the, I think it's like a pig or something. You know, that original photo there. Somewhere, Sometime in New York City, Mind Games, Walls and Bridges, Rock and Roll, Double Fantasy, and then the posthumous album Milk and Honey. And then we've also got all my solo Paul material, which I'm going to do. Yeah, we got all the Paul McCartney stuff as well. A soundtrack he composed called The Family Way. These are the archive releases of McCartney 1, Ram, Red Rose Speedway. This is the soundtrack for Give My Regards to Broad Street. Terrible movie, but a good soundtrack. The Russian Live album. Easily, in my opinion, one of his best records he's done in the last 20 years or so, called Chaos and Creation in the Backyard. Shit, hold on. New, and then McCartney 3 here. So, okay, here's my Ringo stuff. We've got his album Sentimental Journey, which a lot of people don't like, but I don't mind this record. It's alright. Ringo. The soundtrack he did with Nielsen, Son of Dracula. Goodnight Vienna. I'm not pronouncing that. I'm just not going to pronounce that. And then we've got Bad Boy. And then Stop and Take the Time to Smell the Roses. So that's all my Ringo stuff here. Let's do the Elvis stuff. We got a 1964 repress of his debut album, which I spent quite a bit on. 1964 repress of the second album. Also a 1964 repress of Loving You. They're not originals. The originals go for a fuck ton of money. 64 repress of the Christmas album. 1967 pressing of the Gold Records album. Original 58 press of King Creole. Original 59 pressing of For LP Fans Only. 77 reissue of A Date with Elvis. Original 59 pressing of 50 Million Elvis Fans Can't Be Wrong. I think this is the second or the third pressing of Elvis's Back. '67 mono repress of His Hand in Mine. Original pressing of GI Blues. This one's a funny story, but original Australian pressing of Something for Everybody, and then the original mono UK pressing of the same album that my girlfriend bought me for my birthday. The story was, the reason why I have, multiple pressings is because one of the records I got a copy of it, and the seller gave me a shit copy that unfortunately skipped and popped and clicked. So she tried to buy me an upgrade copy to, help me out, which I appreciated. The copy she got is much better than that one, but I'm still keeping my eye out for another copy just in case in the future if I see it for a decent price. We also got 1967 mono pressing of Blue Hawaii. We got an original UK mono of Potluck with Elvis. Original 62 pressing of Girls, 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 which I bought when I first started collecting many years ago. I think this is an original 63 pressing of Gold Records Volume 3. I might be wrong. Original pressing of It Happened at the World's Fair. Original pressing of Fun in Acapulco. 70s reissue of Kissing Cousins. This one's beaten to shit, but who cares. Original pressing of Rustabout. Original pressing of Girl Happy. 70s reissue of Harem Scarum with the original Chic photo right there, which is cool. Cool piece of history. We got original mono of Elvis for Everyone. Original Australian mono of California Holiday with the bonus photo on the back there of Elvis from the film. Original US pressing of Frankie and Johnny. Original Australian mono of Paradise Hawaiian Style. Original mono of How Great Thou Art. Original mono of Double Trouble. Original UK stereo of Clam Bake along with the wedding photo of him and Priscilla. 80s German repress of Golden Records Volume 4. Late 70s, early 80s repress of Speedway. Original pressing of Elvis Sings Flaming Star. 80s repressing of The Comeback Special. At the moment, if you don't know, if you can't tell, I'm obviously trying to complete or collect earlier or original pressings of Elvis material, so that's kind of my new thing at the minute I've been trying to do. But sometimes I'll pick up Japanese ones too, and they look and sound pretty good. 70s Japanese repressing of From Elvis in Memphis with the bonus photo. The double album. The double album, which is the live and the studio record. Stereo Let's Be Friends. Almost in Love. The Christmas album. 1972 repress of February 70 on Stage, with a photo of Elvis from 1972, of course. Original Japanese of That's the Way It Is. UK pressing of You'll Never Walk Alone. This is my granddad's record from his collection. Original Australian pressing of I Got Lucky. This album, funny enough, took me a long time to find. I shit you not. This took me years. This was one of the last Elvis albums I needed. Come On Everybody, original US pressing on Camden there. We also got the country album with the baby photo. This is an original UK press with the baby photo there of Elvis, which is cool. Cool piece of history there. An original Australian pressing of Love Letters from Elvis with the orange label. Flexy as hell though, which is terrible. I think this is an original US pressing, but it might be a mid-70s pressing of this. Elvis Sings the Wonderful World of Christmas, which a lot of people interpreted as me hating on the album, but I don't hate this album, but I don't love this album either. It's kind of like in the middle for me. Most of the albums that Elvis put out in the 70s were kind of mid, not gonna lie, because it was just a hodgepodge of random tracks put together for the sake of making an album. Original pressing of He Touched Me. Original Australian pressing of Elvis Now. Original pressing of Elvis Sings Hits from His Movies Volume 1. 40th anniversary edition of Elvis as recorded at Madison Square Gardens, double LP release. Elvis, this one I already showed, but yeah, it's the Burning Love record. I already showed this along with Clam Bake in the first part. Elvis, Separate Ways. So that's, now we're getting into the late, like the mid 70s material. So we're going to do the 73 to 76 stuff, which, bear with me a second. So we've got an original Japanese Aloha, original Australian Elvis the Fool, original Yugoslav pressing of Raised on Rock, original UK Good Times, original Australian, I think this is an 80s reissue of this, Legendary Performer Volume 1, 75-76 reissue of Recorded Live on Stage in Memphis, original promo pressing of Having Fun on Stage with Elvis, original Australian pressing of Promised Land, original Australian pressing of Today, 77 reissue of From Elvis Presley Boulevard, Memphis, Tennessee, original Australian Legendary Performer, and then we get into the 77 material, which is the last couple of things that Elvis ever did before he unfortunately passed away at the age of 42. Welcome to My World, which was a compilation of country material. His last album, Moody Blue, this is the Australian pressing. I also have the American pressing on blue vinyl. This one I recently picked up when I was in Sunbury. This is an upgrade from the old copy that I picked up in this record collection. Elvis in Concert. The King Elvis, which has some stuff that was previously unreleased from the after show rehearsal from the Aloha special. So what they did after the Aloha show ended, the producer of Aloha got Elvis to sing a couple of songs that they would edit in between the actual show when it aired in America. And the songs he did was Blue Hawaii, Early Morning Rain, Hawaiian Wedding Song, Cooper Wee Poor, and No More. So he did a couple of songs there. Legendary Performer Volume 3 with Danny on there. So we've got some more albums from the later 70s material. So when he died, there was an influx of wanting more Elvis material. So RCA went to work, and Felton Jarvis did as well. And they put out stuff like Memories of Elvis, Volume 1 and Volume 2. The Guitar Man album, which Felton worked on and produced. Unfortunately, after releasing this album, Elvis's producer Felton Jarvis would die from a stroke, and they never did a Volume 2. Apparently there was going to be a Volume 2, like a follow-up to this album. What it was a collection of Elvis songs that they rearranged and made into more early 80s, slicker, modern production styles, I guess. Legendary Performer, Volume 4. Essential Elvis, which is just outtakes from his movie soundtracks and stuff. And then Volume 2, again, just outtakes from his movies and studio stuff. The 2018 album Where No One Stands Alone, which is a pretty good album, actually. Then we get into the, what would you call them, like bonus material / live bootlegs. So let's get through these quickly. The complete $1 Million Quartet sessions. Elvis Made in Germany, the home recordings. The 2019 Record Store Day release of American Sound, the outtakes from that. Then we've got the 2020 Record Store Day release of From Elvis in Nashville. And then we've got Elvis Back in Nashville. Burning Love, the RCA Rehearsals, Record Store Day release there. And then we got a few more we're going to do, and then that shall be the end of the video. Then this is all the unofficial bootleg stuff. So we've got the Complete On Tour Sessions Volume 1. This was a release done in Italy in the late 80s from a fan service that did the bootlegs. A bootleg of Elvis's last concert in Vegas, Softly As I Leave You, the last ever Vegas show he ever did, in December 1976, and then his famous New Year's Eve concert. I bought this for many reasons. One, I've heard so many great things about this concert, and two, there's a photo of Elton John that they took of his record collection, and in his record collection he had a copy of this bootleg. Yes, he had a copy of this. in his record collection. That is the Rocking with Elvis on New Year's Eve show, December 31st, 1976. Then we also got the Last Farewell, which is his last ever official concert he ever did on June 26, 1977, from Indianapolis at the Market Square Arena. Cadillac Elvis, which is a collection of stuff that was recorded live. This is a bit of false advertising, because on the release they say stuff like Poke Salad Annie, recorded live January 26, 1970, and it's not. The version that they use on here is the version from That's the Way It Is. So yeah, if you buy this one, be warned. Some of the dates on this are total bullshit, and they're completely incorrect. We got some more stuff. We also got some tribute records. We got Smash Hits Presley Style from Music for Pleasure, the hits of Elvis Presley, and then they weren't done. They did a volume 2 as well. The soundtrack to the Elvis movie with Kurt Russell, with the music done by Ronnie McDowell. Little Tony even got on the Elvis tribute train. And in this really awful EPE's fucking tribute concert album, one of the worst things I've ever heard in my life. Glenn Campbell Sings for the King, which was a bunch of demos that he did from So Glenn Campbell in the 60s was a session musician. He played with the likes of the Beach Boys, the Ronettes, Phil Spector, Frank Sinatra, Elvis. And in the 60s, they discovered that he had a good singing voice. So Ben Wiseman and all these different guys, and Sid Wayne, they would get Glenn Campbell to do demos for their songs that they would write for Elvis. And he did some demos like We Call on Him, Easy Come, Easy Go. All I Needed Was the Rain, Spin Out, I'll Be Back, Stay Away Joe, Clam Bake, Do the Clam. So they would get Glenn Campbell to do the demos so that Elvis would listen to them and decide if he liked them or not. In some cases he did, and in others he completely hated them. Speaking of Elvis, we got his backup singers, the Sweet Inspirations, with their debut album from '67. And then the final album, the second to last album, his guitarist James Burton on AM Records doing a completely instrumental album. Released in 1971, that record was. We're almost done. I'm going to show 2 more things that I didn't show in the box sets video. So we've got the Elvis Aaron Presley box set released in 1980 for what would have been his 45th birthday. And then a couple of years later they followed that up with a Golden Celebration, which would have been released on his 50th birthday back in 1985, which they were. But unfortunately Elvis was not alive to celebrate those 2 occasions, as he had died a couple of years before. And yeah, we're pretty much done. We have pretty much finished the entire record collection in 2 videos. So, funny enough, we have finished here, and down here, pardon me, and here. So we have finished the entire record collection. If this video gets about 20 likes, I might even do the collection for my 45 RPM singles, if anyone's interested. I just wanted to say thanks for watching, arrivederci, and goodbye.